Hello, it's Kathy again, and we are going over chapter 14, the appraisals and valuation. Valuation and appraisal. Woohoo! So exciting. Okay, so we're going to talk about the approaches to value. I think what I'm going to do is talk about the three approaches first, make a little chart for y'all to take a picture of, and then I'll go ahead and read what's in the book for you guys to know and to make note of. This part is kind of about like the three different approaches. I always say in the class, basically there's 8 things to know about almost every category. And if you know the 8 things you need to know about every category, you are good to go. Appraisals and valuation and financing are tough because they all have multiple layers of 8 things that are in them. And that's why I think a lot of people struggle with it. But let's go for this. Where's my whiteboard? So I'm just going to make these little charts for you and you can kind of screenshot it or whatever. New whiteboard. I'm just going to draw the text. So there's 3. There's 3 different ways of determining value. So there's 3 different ways of determining value: the sales comparison, the cost, and the income capitalization approach. They all have about 8 things that you need to know in order to be knowledgeable about them. So the first thing you need to know about the sales comparison report approach is it's always used on land. Okay, it's always used on land, vacant land. Okay, that might be called a parcel, it might be called vacant land, it might be called whatever, but it's always used on land. It's the easiest for us salespeople to use, which is the one we use. We go in there and we determine our market analysis by comparing one property to another. So it's based on the principle of substitution. Substitution. It is used in the other 3 appraisal approaches. And it is it's the least reliable in an inactive or rapidly changing market. Let's see what else. It can be used like for houses or for rentals to figure out like what the going rate for those things are. Oh, and the hardest part is adjusting for differences because no 2 properties are alike. So our hardest part is adjusting for the differences. So I think that's what we need to know for that. The cost approach. The cost approach is always used on special purpose properties, churches, schools, community centers, hospitals. There's 2 different types. There is the replacement cost. Is the cost to build a new one with similar, oops, put on next line, with similar utility. And the reproduction cost is the cost to build a replica. The hardest part is depreciating the building. Because when you're building, so what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we're going to try to figure out how much this property is going to be worth. So there's a school and we're going to figure out it's let's say a 1990 school. It was built in the 90s and it's now 2024. And we don't want to know what the value of that school is. We're going to go figure out how much it's going to cost to build a new school today. And then we have to depreciate the building from 2024 to 1990. What is that? That's 34 years of depreciation. How many air conditioning units? How many, windows have been replaced? How many times has the roof been replaced? How many heating systems have gone in there, right? So things break down and they have to depreciate the building to see what the age would, like what the cost would be for that 1990 building after they built a new one, and then tried to figure out, okay, how many things have worn out in this building over 34 years. Okay. So that's the hardest part, is depreciating the building. The reproduction cost one, the cost to build a replica, is used on like historical buildings. And they have to like use the exact same historical, that's right. Oh, I misplaced historical, and churches is missing the R. There we go. It's used on historical buildings. Like, let's say you have a historical courthouse or something like that. They're going to rebuild it exactly the way it was. And they have to use like the same or similar materials. And, the old windows with the strings that rolled them up and stuff like that. They're going to have to search for that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? So that's the one that's the replica. The replacement cost, that's the upper limit of value. Remember, no prudent person would pay more for a building than to buy the land and build a new one. There's 4 ways to determine the cost approach. Is the cost per square foot, the cost per cubic foot, the unit in place method, and the unit in place method, and I can't think of it. We'll come back to it. The cost per square foot is like, hey, you can go to a builder and say, about how much does it cost to build a property, like to build a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home per square foot. They'll say, oh, it's about $300 or $450 a square foot right now. You're like, oh, okay, so if I want to build a 1,300 square foot house, that's what it's going to cost me, plus whatever the cost of the land is. It's like, yeah. And then it might be, okay, how much is it for a 4-bedroom? Well, it might only be, a little bit more, because it just doesn't cost that much more to put the extra bedroom, and that's kind of where we go back to that 750 square foot house, being double to be the 1,500. It's not going to be double the price. The quantity survey method. The quantity survey method. So the cost per square foot is kind of like, just an overall, like even when we look in stuff at the MLS, it shows what the cost per square foot of the house is listed at and what the cost per square foot of sales price is and stuff like that. The cost per cubic foot would probably be used more on like a building that's like a warehouse or something like that. The unit in place method kind of breaks it down a little and says, okay, well, it's so much per 100 feet of roofing. It's so much per square foot of drywall. It's so much per square foot to paint. It's so much per cubic, I know it's per square yard of carpeting, right? So that's how we get our prices, and they'll break it down into those little chunks. But the quantity survey method is the most comprehensive. It literally takes into consideration, like the cost of permits and everything. So I have a friend who like kind of chases storms, like, hurricanes and stuff like that. And basically what she does is when she goes out, she has to consider not just the cost of like building a new one, because a lot of times these properties are damaged and stuff like that. So They have to talk the cost of, like, getting new permits, mucking out all the old stuff, potentially building like bigger stanchions or things to make it so this building doesn't fall down the next time a hurricane hits, coming up with better ways to rebuild so that it's not the same as it was. So it's that kind of stuff. So those are the things you kind of need to know about the cost approach. And the income capitalization approach. It's always used on income producing properties. Oh, by the way, and the one last thing on the cost approach is the hardest part. Oh, I already got that already. Yeah. It's always used on income producing properties. It's the present worth. Let's do this. It's the present worth of future benefits. I will gladly pay $1 million today to make 120K per year the rest of my life, right? It's the present worth of future benefits. It's always used on income producing properties. The hardest part is working with the investors' cap rate. In other words, each investor has a different cap rate, right? One investor might say, yeah, I'm willing to pay $1 million for 120. And another one might say, no, I'm only willing to pay 900 for 120. And another one might say, and they all have different cap rates, and their cap rates kind of change too, based on how well their other investments are performing, right? I had a lady who bought her first, income property, and it was no problem, no brainer. She makes a lot of money, blah, blah, blah. Second one she bought was a little tougher. We wanted to make sure that her income was there, but no problem. The third one she bought, it's like, okay, we need to really make sure these other two are performing, because now she's stretching herself kind of thin. So her cap rate changed, and her ease of getting the loan and how much money she needed to put down changed with each property based on her ability to have a loan. You know what I mean? And the lender was like, this is a little tight. We're not sure you're going to make the money you need to make in order to make this right for you, if that makes sense. So the hardest part is working with the investor's cap rate for the appraiser. They use the they use the sales comparison approach to figure out rental amounts. Compare. The first thing they do to figure out how much, like, they need to figure out the gross income. So in order to figure out they have to decide, they have to calculate the gross income by 100% occupied 100% of the time. And then they deduct for vacancies. Now on the test, it asks, do you have to deduct for vacancies on your income taxes? No. But do you deduct for vacancies on your income capitalization approach to real estate? Yes, because we don't, they're going to calculate saying, okay, the gross income of this property is 100% occupied 100% of the time, but obviously it's not going to be occupied 100% of the time. So they have to deduct for vacancies to come up with effective gross income. And then they deduct like management fees and other fees to come up with the net income. Okay. They are not allowed to deduct their mortgage or interest on this. That's just like the cost of doing business for them. What are you doing? Okay. Let's see. Investors want to make a return on investment. That equals the money they're making monthly / yearly. They want a return of investment. Equals depreciation allowances. Okay, so the return of the investment is the depreciation allowances. In other words, the building gets depreciated year after year because the things on the building are wearing out, right? Land is never depreciated. Land is never depreciated. Okay. So what happens is the cost basis of the building is what they paid for the building. That's what the cost basis is. And then when they add things, they add capital expenditures. They are added and depreciated over time, like a fence, a pool, AC, a roof. Those are all considered capital expenditures because initially they do add value to your building, but then as they get older and older and older, they depreciate because they're not worth as much as they age, right? They can deduct maintenance and repairs the year they are done. Oh, why this is up here. So they can deduct the maintenance and repairs the year they are done. Let's see if that's everything I want to say about it. So you do have to know the difference between a capital expenditure and what, like a repair that can be deducted the year it's done. You're going to have to understand the whole idea that the present worth of future benefits, and that's what the cost, the income capitalization approach is about. You're going to have to understand this whole effective gross income so that they get the gross income and then they deduct for vacancies to come to the effective gross income, or they might even use as part of deducting to the net income. They'll deduct for vacancies to kind of come up with that. So there's the most things you need to know for, can I hide this? Okay. The most things you need to know are really for the income capitalization approach, but all of these things are things that you really want to have an understanding of. It seems like the market data approach or sales comparison is also known as market data approach. I guess I should put that. Again, a house that's rented out is going to be, more the sales comparison approach. It's not going to be the income capitalization approach, even if it's like a rental property or whatever. So I don't know if there's a way you guys were able to see this, but I'm going to kind of scroll slowly here. You can kind of take a screenshot maybe on your computer or take a few seconds to write this down. I don't know if I can save my whiteboard. This is the first time I'm ever using it. It's kind of a new doohickey for me. I'll scroll down. Maybe I can share it. Can I share it? I can share it to me. Okay, I copied the link. I'm going to email it to myself so I can come back here, I guess. Please. Okay, hopefully it'll stay in here forever and ever. I don't know. I don't really know how it works. But there you go. So the whiteboard's done. I hope it's saved. Let's see. Whiteboard. Existing whiteboard. Oh, there it is. Cool. And so, yeah, so it's right there. It's still there. Okay. Wonderful. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and read the book. So I gave you all the pertinent information that I want you to know that I would draw for you on a whiteboard if I was doing it at that point, but I'm not going to be able to do that today. So this is what we're doing. We did that. And I can obviously send you that link if need be. And actually, these are also in my Instagram. Like I've broken each one of these sections down into like 3-minute videos. Or actually, it's 2 or so, a toso. So it's like a 2 to 3 minute video that makes it like a lot of information, but it's the same and kind of packs it all in. Approaches to value. This is the valuation appraisal part 2. There are 3 methods available to estimate value: sales comparison, income capitalization, and cost analysis. One or more of these approaches is used in all appraisals. The sales comparison or market data approach is a method of estimating market value whereby a subject property is compared to comp properties that have sold recently. It can be applied to all types of properties: land, residences, commercial, and industrial, provided a sufficient number of comps are available. So those are 2 things I missed. It can be used, let's put that back up there. It can be used on all properties for the market data. Let's add that in there. Let's see. It's always used on land, easiest for salespeople to use, can be used on any property with enough comps. And oh, you always adjust the comp property to match the subject. You're always taking that comp property. So if it's a 4-bedroom comp and the house that you're selling only has 3 bedrooms, you actually have to decide, okay, this comp is $300,000 and it has 3 bedrooms and mine only has 2. My house is probably worth a little bit less because of that, and you're going to deduct the value of a bedroom to bring down that comp. The reality is with the comps, we know the price that they're listed or sold for. And so we're going to use those comps to determine the value of the property. So we always have to adjust the comp to match the subject. Okay, we added that on there. All right. Let's see. Let's go back. All right. See, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to find stuff. I'm like, oh, I forgot to write that down. It's the best method for residences and the easiest for salespeople to learn. It employs various appraisal principles: supply and demand. Sellers constitute the supply, buyers the demand. The emphasis is on the demand side. It doesn't matter if you have 1 million sellers and not enough buyers, then no one's going to want to buy their stuff, right? Externalities. External forces have the greatest impact on residential properties. Clean streets, surrounding properties, views, parks, and schools have a positive influence. Dirty streets, high crime rate, pollution, noise, etc. have a negative one. The elements of comparison, the characteristics of the property, and other factors that affect the prices would be what you're comparing. Market conditions, the time. The sales made in the last 3 to 6 months might have been affected by inflation, deflation, shortages, higher interest rates, etc. Location. When comps can't be found in the same neighborhood, sales in other neighborhoods have to be adjusted up or down depending on desirability. Physical characteristics. Adjustments made for differences such as square feet, age, condition, style, number of bedrooms, lot size, view, swimming pools, jacuzzis, appliances, etc. Collecting and adjusting the data. The actual sales price may be verified by the seller or buyer, selling broker, multiple listing service, public records, the tax assessor or recorder, or the lender. The listed price indicates the maximum value or asking price. It's obtained through newspaper ads, multiple listing services, or for sale by owner signs. Adjustments for differences may be made using percentages or dollar amounts. So what they did here is they kind of show you how they adjusted for differences here using the comp property and the subject. And it kind of just just gives you a little example. We're not going to go into the details. They're not going to ask you to do that on the state exam. Cost approach. This is the second way to do it. So, okay, I got all the notes in for the sales comparison one. The cost approach is the reproduction or replacement cost, the estimating the value by using the cost new of replacing or reproducing the subject property. The reproduction versus replacement cost. The appraiser first must use one or the other consistently when developing the estimate. Reproduction cost is the cost to construct a replica of the existing building using the same or similar materials at their current price. The replacement cost is the cost to construct an equally desirable substitute improvement, not necessarily using the same materials or to the same specifications. Here's where that utility word kind of comes in. The steps in the appraisal process. They estimate the value of the land as if it's vacant and available for the highest and best use. Then they estimate the replacement or reproduction cost of the new of all improvements. Then they determine the accrued depreciation. It is the hardest for the appraisal to determine. This is something I typed in extra for you because it wasn't in there. They add the value of the land to the depreciated value of the improvement. The characteristics, it sets the upper limit of value. People ordinarily will not pay more for a property than they would cost to replace or find a substitute property. It's adapted for service building. Since comparable sales for service buildings such as city halls, schools, or churches aren't available, the cost approach is the only method available. Oh, I forgot something on here. It's accurate on new buildings. The less of the amount of the depreciation that has accrued, the more accurate the final value estimate. So it's easier to do on new buildings versus old because there's less depreciation. Let's add that to our little whiteboard. Existing whiteboard. No one's collaborating with me right now. It's easier to do on newer versus older properties due to depreciation schedules. All right. So that's the hardest part for the appraisal is because he has to use depreciation schedules to depreciate the property, and that is the hardest part of the cost approach. It's accurate on new buildings. The less the amount of the depreciation that has accrued, the more accurate the final value estimate. Now, let's say they actually have a single family residence that is basically brand new, that was built in 2012, and it's surrounded somehow by properties that were built in the 1950s, because let's say at some point that property did burn down or get so damaged they had to tear it down and build a new one. In that scenario, they're probably not going to pull comps from the area. They're probably going to use the cost approach and figure, okay, it was built in 2000, whatever, 12, which is 12 years ago. So we're going to have to go ahead and figure out how much it's going to cost to build a new one and then depreciate it the 12 years, because it's easier to do that than try to compare a 2012 property to a 1953 property. You know, so there are times when they're going to use that cost approach for newer construction in a neighborhood that actually has a lot of older construction just because of the way it worked out. So there might be a test question on that. You just have to be careful, because if there's plenty of comps around that are similar, right, within, let's say, a half mile or a mile, they're going to use the comps and use the market data approach. But literally, if it's like in a rural neighborhood and everything else is super old and they have to go out like 5 or 10 miles to find a comp for it, they're probably going to go ahead and use the cost approach on that property. Okay. The characteristics, it sets the upper limit of value. We already did that. Adapted for service building, accurate on new buildings, did that. The basis for adjusting insurance claims. Most fire and casualty policies pay the full cost of replacing the damaged improvement without regard to accrued depreciation. Square foot method. So here's one of those methods, right? The square foot method, particularly adapted to single story structures such as residences, warehouses, and store building. The costs of comparable structures are equated to dollars per square foot. Outside measurements are used to compute the building's total square footage. The gross square feet of the living area excludes garage, unfinished basement, and attic. Two-story homes usually have twice as much living area. The square foot costs may be obtained by comparing subject property to new buildings or by the use of cost estimating manuals. It's the least complicated and quickest approach, and most often used by West Coast appraisers. Example, the cubic foot method Similar to the square foot method, except the cost to estimate is equated to dollars per cubic foot. The cubic feet is derived by multiplying the building's width by depth by mean height. As in the square foot method, as the square footage or cubic footage increases, the unit cost per cubic foot is less due to the fact that the cost of plumbing, heating, electrical doors, and windows do not increase proportionally to the size of the property. So that's why the cost per square foot changes on a smaller building versus a larger building, because just because it's that much larger, the heating and all those things don't increase that much more. You know, the unit is the cost of the unit, and then adding the ductwork and all that stuff is more, but it's not like adding extra units necessarily. The unit in place method employs unit costs for various components of the building. Components include the foundation, plumbing, electrical, framing, roofing, painting, and etc. The foundation cost can be expressed in dollars per cubic yards of cement, painting and costs per square foot, roofing and costs per 100 feet, etc. It's kind of like we talked about. It produces an estimate nearly as accurate as the quantity survey method with a lot less effort. It requires a specialized knowledge of the appraiser. The quantity survey method, that's the big one. It's the most comprehensive and accurate method and repeats the contractor's original method of developing the bid. It estimates the quantity and quality of materials and labor to install, adds the cost of permits, insurance, supervision, overhead, and profit. It considers indirect costs of possible demolition, building permits, legal fees, financing, surveys, insurance, etc., and the direct costs of labor, materials, profit, and overhead. It's the most accurate method, but expensive and time-consuming. The income capitalization approach. This method is used on income producing properties, which establishes the present worth of the future benefits. It's like the present worth, the value of the future benefits, how much I'm going to pay to get the income. There's 3 techniques. The property residual is income from both the building and the land is considered as a single unit and is used to arrive at a combined value of improvements in land. The land residual figures out the value of the land, and the building residual figures out the value of the building. The procedure, the appraiser estimates the net income and divides by the cap rate to establish value. The net income is calculated as follows. The estimated gross income is the total income attributable to the property at 100% occupancy. Then they deduct vacancy and collection loss to arrive at the effective gross income. Remember, we don't deduct vacancies on our income taxes because the vacancy didn't give us income, right? Then we deduct the fixed expenses, variable expenses, and replacement allowances. The fixed expenses are those that do not vary whether the property is occupied or not, like taxes and insurance. The variable expenses are things that vary with the level of occupancy, like management fees, utilities, maintenance, etc. Replacement allowances, building components that will wear out faster than the building, carpets, water heaters, washers and dryers, and etc. And the balance is the net operating income. The income is based on future expected income. Past and present income is used as a guide only. The appraiser must consider the following factors. The contract rent is the income based on the leases that have some time to run before expiration. The rent on month-to-month leases can be adjusted quickly. The economic rent, there's a star by this, the owner may be charging rents above or below the going rate of market. Economic rent is established by rents being charged for similar apartments in the surrounding area. The quality, quantity, and durability. This is going to probably be on the test. The quantity considers the amount of the rent. The credit rating of the tenant is the quality, and the term of the leases is considered the durability. The capitalization rate. Investors' total expected return, which includes a return on capital, the profit invested, and the return of capital, recovery through depreciation allowances. It's influenced by risk. The greater the risk, the higher the rate. Oh, I forgot to put that on our thing. So you need to know that when the cap rate, the greater the risk, the higher the rate. Let's type that in. Greater the risk, the higher the rate. There we go. The greater the risk, the higher the rate. There we go. All right. Other influences, inflation, supply and demand of mortgage funds and tax considerations, the market or sales data, preferred technique when sufficient data are available, compare rates on properties that are sold recently and have similar income, expenses, and market conditions, and the band of investment considers rates demanded by each investor, the first trustee, lender, second trustee, etc., and the buyer's equity. It shows you some examples of the property residual process. You don't really need to know that for the test, so we'll go to the next page. Cash flow. Most investors also consider the cost of total loan payments on the purchase. If the loan payment exceeds the operating expense, the investor has a negative cash flow and must add to the investment each month. If the operating income exceeds the loan payments, the investor has a positive cash flow. The gross rent multiplier is a method of appraising income property whereby the ratio of the sales price of similar properties to the annual gross income establishes a gross rent multiplier. By applying this multiplier to the gross income of the property being appraised, a value is established. It's used in the sales comparison approach. It may not be accurate if similar properties that are used have different operating expense ratios. It's applicable to single-family residents or duplexes that may be rented. The monthly or annual gross income may be used. And then there's an example. A single-family residence rented for $2,100 per month. Based on a gross monthly multiplier of 150, the value of the property is $315,000. If the rent is increased to $2,300 a month, what is the new value at the same multiplier? Well, 2,300 times 150 is 345,000. So it's a way of taking that and figuring it out. Literally, we hardly ever use it, but it isn't an idea that is on the test. So they don't give you the math for it, but you have to understand that one way to figure out the income is the gross rent multiplier. And basically you're taking the price of a property and dividing it by whatever the rental amount is. So a $300,000 house, divided by $1,000, let's say they get $1,000 a month, have a gross rent multiplier of 300. Depreciation, loss in value from any cause, customarily measured by estimating the difference between the current replacement cost new and the estimated value of a property as of the appraisal date. There's three types. There's physical deterioration. This results, so this is not considered obsolescence. This is physical deterioration. It's usually caused from it results from the following inherent causes, which are usually curable: wear and tear from use, like deferred maintenance items; negligent care, like from deferred maintenance; damage by dry rot, termites, etc. Then there's functional obsolescence, which results from the following inherent causes. It's usually curable: poor architecture, design, and style, a building with massive cornices or a 5-bedroom house with a 1-car garage; lack of modern facilities, like they don't have air conditioning; changes in styles of construction methods, or materials. Like a lot of those old 50 houses hardly have any closet space. They don't really have a lot of outlets. So there's a lot of things in older houses that people don't really desire anymore, which would give them functional obsolescence. Can you repair those things and fix those things? Yes, people do it all the time, but it can be very cost prohibitive, but it's still fixable because it's functional obsolescence. Economic obsolescence is beyond your control. It's extraneous, right? It's beyond what you can do. Economic results from the following extraneous causes, usually incurable. Misplaced improvements. I literally knew somebody who built a house on top of the septic system. So there was no way to clean out their septic tank. That is pretty much incurable because the septic tank had to be so far from the lot line, and then the house had to be so far from the lot line, and they ended up building the house on top of the septic system. Zoning or legislative restrictions, depression, unemployment, and other economic upheaval. There's 3 methods of estimating. More buildings are torn down than fall down. This is one of the things you need to know. More buildings are torn down than fall down. Straight line or age of life, based on the theory that depreciation occurs annually in proportion to its total estimated economic life. Economic life is productive life, usually shorter than physical life. So obviously these 1950s buildings are still standing, but they really don't fit what we need anymore. So people are more likely to tear it down and build a new one than to let it just fall and dilapidate itself down to the ground. So that's the idea of more buildings are torn down than fall down. Economic life is productive life. Like, see, to me, I'm 56 years old, but my economic life is way younger. You know, I'm not ready to croak yet. You know, I'm not as old as I seem. I'm kind of like a young person in an older person's body. The effective age, that's what I meant. The effective age is usually used instead of the actual age. A building might be 25 years old, but because of good care and good care only looks to be 20 years old. That's me. I'm 56, but I don't seem 56. I seem younger because my effective age is younger than my age, at least as far as I'm concerned. Although my honey did call me an old hag the other day. I didn't really appreciate that. Okay, on the next page, there's pictures of houses, there's architectural styles. The only one that I've really seen, I guess you need to know the Dutch colonial is the one that kind of looks like it's kind of got like more of a barn-shaped roof. The contemporary kind of looks like a Frank Lloyd Wright house. And the California Ranch is known for having bay windows. I guess they have larger windows, and those are considered bay windows, and that's the California Ranch. So you're going to want to know the Dutch Colonial, which kind of has that weird like barn-shaped top to it. The contemporary kind of looks like those like kind of sleek-looking Frank Lloyd Wright houses, and the California Ranch looks like that typical L-shaped California house. You know what I mean? And they generally have kind of bigger windows in the living room and stuff. Okay. The next page has pictures of construction terms, and it just kind of shows you these are all things you need to know. You need to know that the floor joist is a parallel. You need to know that there's really not a lot to know on this place, but it shows you some stuff, and I think you guys should really look at the pictures. It's good to sort of see the pictures in the book and like look at the construction terms to help you. Here's that one that I just went over. This is the one that looks like the Dutch Colonial. That's the Frank Lloyd Wright looking house. That's the California Ranch, Cape Cod, and a French Provincial. On this page, there's some things you need to know. You need to know that the ridge board is the highest member, like it's the top of the roof. Let's see if I can show it to you. This is the ridge board. It's the highest. That will be on the test. That's about all that's on that page. The roof styles, it's hip to B square. It's sloping on 4 sides. It's hip to B square. Where it is, right there. The hip roof is right there. It's hip to B square. It's sloping on 4 sides. The gambrel is the one that looks kind of like a barn roof. The mansard is the flat roof, and the gable is just the normal peak you draw on your pictures when you're 5 years old. So the gable is the little, TP1. The one that slopes on 4 sides is hip to B square. It's sloping on 4 sides. The mansard is the flat roof. And then the gambrel is one that looks like the barn roof. There's some construction terms and things on the back here. We're going to go through these, and then we'll be done with this chapter. The highlighted terms are the backfill. It's the replacement of excavated earth into a hole against the structure. So they dig it out and then they build the foundation. And that foundation is like concrete and stuff. So there's space on both sides to build that foundation. And then when they're done, they fill it back in with that dirt. That's called backfill. A bearing wall is a wall or partition supporting any vertical load in addition to its own weight. So that's a bearing wall. It's immovable usually. So it's one of the things that might be on the test as a real property because it's immovable by law. A commercial acre is the area remaining from an acre of newly subdivided land after deducting the area devoted to streets, sidewalks, and curbs. So the commercial acre is minus streets, curbs, and sidewalks. Deciduous trees, they're the ones that lose their leaves in the autumn and the winter. So those are deciduous trees. So a deciduous is a tree, not a soil. EER is energy efficiency rating. It is a rating system for appliances whereby the higher the rating, the greater the efficiency. So the higher the number, the better the EER. Elevation is a geometrical drawing of upright parts of a structure as shown in blueprints and scale drawings. The elevation sheet kind of shows though like the outside views of properties. That's the definition on the test. Elevation sheet shows the up like the outside views of the properties. The plot plan shows like where they are in conjunction to other ones. When you look at an elevation sheet, like for a new construction, they're going to show you, oh, this one is the one that has like the river rock on the bottom and the siding, and this one's like all brick and that kind of thing. That's the elevation sheet. Flashing is not like this. We're not flashing. It's the sheet metal and other material used to protect a building from seepage of water. So it's like that metal that goes around like your chimney, or those pipes for like the pipes that go up in the sky, up out of your chimney or out of your roof, that allow like smells and stuff to escape, whatnot. They have like flashing. It's a metal thing that goes around, so that when they'll put the flashing down, and then they put the roof tiles around it to make sure the water is seeping into your roof, into your house. Footing, the base or bottom of a foundation wall, pier, or column. Foundation is the supporting portion of a structure below the first floor construction or below grade, including the footings. The foundation plan is the plan drawn to scale, showing the foundation, footing, and pier placement. A gable roof is a pitched roof with sloping sides. It's the gable roof that looks more like a barn. A hip roof is sloping on 4 sides. HVAC stands for heating, venting, and air conditioning. A joist is a series of parallel beams to which the boards of a floor and ceiling laths are nailed and supported in turn by larger beams, girders, or bearing walls. So a joist is a parallel. A party wall is a wall erected on the line between two adjoining properties under which different ownership for the use of both parties. So like a shared fence could be considered a party wall, but also like in a condo, you share a wall between two units. That's called the party wall. A percolation test is used to establish how quickly water will seep through the soil. Adobe soil is resistant to percolation. Sandy soil is excellent. Potable is water that is suitable for drinking. So if it's potable, it sounds like the opposite. It seems like it came from the toilet, but when I think about it, but potable is like, think of it as in a pot and you can drink it. R value is the rating system used to rate insulation materials. Again, the higher the number, the better. A ridge board is the board placed on the edge of the ridge of a roof to support the upper ends of the rafters, also called a roof tree, ridge piece, ridge plate, or ridge pole. It's the highest. You just need to know the ridge board is the highest. That's like the teepee at the top of the roof. A soil pipe is the pipe carrying waste out of the house to the main sewer line. And a subfloor is lumber or plywood nailed to the floor joist to provide walking area during construction. It's used as a base for finished flooring. So I hope that you guys got out of this what you wanted. Again, I appreciate y'all. I'm sorry it took me a while to get it done. I've had some issues with it, to be honest. So I'm glad that it's hopefully going to work this time. I'm going to go ahead and just look at that whiteboard one more time and let you guys like look at it one more time if there's something that you guys want to look at. Let's see. How do I make it bigger? Oh, here, I can do it here, it looks like. Oh, it can be a little smaller. That's why it's at 62%. It kind of doesn't let me. We'll do the 100%. We'll kind of scroll around. So the sales comparison approach is always used on land. It's easiest for salespeople to use, can be used on any property with enough comps. What if there's a way I can print this? I really have never done this before, so I don't really know how to screenshot it or whatever. Upload. Where can I upload this to? I can do it to document. I can do it to my desktop. Make it a okay. Open. Ah, I guess I can't just do that. I guess so that would be uploading something from someplace else. Well, Well, I don't know. I'll figure out later. Sales comparison. There's the cost approach. If you guys need to take some notes from there. You can maybe take a screenshot of this. I don't really know. Let's see if I can get to screen. And then, not here. All right. Well, I hope this is good for you guys. I'm sorry that this is kind of a weird ending to it, but it is what it is. You're probably the last class that's going to see this forever and ever. So I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on Monday, 6:30 to 8. Bye. Let's see. Take this.